When the Smith family moved into the old house, we were excited. It was big, with a beautiful garden and lots of space for our kids to play. But there was one thing that puzzled us: the attic. It had a heavy, rusty lock on it, and no one had the key. One night, about a week after we moved in, we were lying in bed when we heard strange noises above us. It sounded like footsteps, slow and heavy. My wife Sarah looked at me with wide eyes. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said, sitting up. "I think it's coming from the attic." We listened for a few more minutes, but the footsteps stopped. The kids were asleep, so I didn't want to make too much noise. We decided to check it out in the morning. The next day, I borrowed a set of tools from a neighbor and went up to the attic. The lock was old and rusty, but after some work, I managed to break it open. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and a cloud of dust filled the air. I coughed and waved my hand in front of my face to clear the dust. The attic was dark and smelled musty. I found a light switch and flicked it on. The dim light revealed old toys, dusty furniture, and stacks of boxes. In one corner, there was an old wooden rocking horse. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. As I looked around, something caught my eye. There was a small, leather-bound book on top of a box. I picked it up and realized it was a diary. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was neat but faded. I flipped through the pages, reading bits and pieces. It seemed to belong to a girl who had lived in the house many years ago. The last entry gave me chills. It read, "They are here." Just as I finished reading, the attic door slammed shut with a loud bang. I jumped, dropping the diary. My heart was pounding in my chest. The footsteps started again, louder this time. They were coming closer. "Sarah!" I shouted, banging on the door. "Open the door." I could hear her running up the stairs. She tried to open the door, but it was stuck. "I can't open it," she cried. The footsteps were right behind me now. I turned around, but there was no one there. I felt a cold breeze brush past me, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. "Please hurry," I yelled. Sarah was crying now, struggling with the door. Finally, with a loud crack, the door flew open. I stumbled out, gasping for breath. We slammed the door shut behind me and rushed downstairs. "What happened?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," I said, still trying to catch my breath. "But we're not staying here another night." We gathered the kids and packed our bags as quickly as we could. The whole time, I could hear those footsteps in the attic, pacing back and forth. It felt like we were being watched. We left the house that night and went to stay with Sarah's parents. The next day, we called a moving company and arranged to have our things taken out of the house. I didn't want to go back, but I had to make sure everything was taken care of. As we were leaving, I looked back at the house one last time. It stood there, silent and dark, with its secrets locked away in the attic. I knew we had made the right decision to leave. Later, I did some research and found out that the house had a long history of strange occurrences. Previous owners had reported hearing noises, seeing shadows, and feeling an eerie presence. Some said the house was haunted by the spirits of children who had lived there long ago. I still think about that diary sometimes and those chilling words, "They are here." I wonder who wrote them and what they saw. I hope that whatever it was, it has found peace. But one thing is for sure, we won't be going back to that house. The Smith family has moved on, leaving the haunted attic and its mysteries behind.
Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to a channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share the stories with your friends and family. Thanks.
I was driving cross-country on a long trip, feeling tired and in need of rest. I saw a small roadside motel and decided to stop for the night. It looked a bit old, but I didn't mind. I just needed a place to sleep. I walked into the lobby and rang the bell on the counter. A man came out from the back. He looked a bit surprised to see me. "Hello," I said. "I'd like a room for the night, please." The clerk hesitated for a moment. "Sure," he said. "We have a room available. Room 13. He handed me the key, but I noticed he seemed reluctant, like he didn't want to give me that particular room. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe he was just tired or having a bad day. I took the key and headed to room 13. The room was at the end of a long hallway. The carpet was old and worn, and the walls had seen better days. When I reached the door, I felt a slight chill. I shook it off and went inside. The room was simple but clean enough. There was a bed, a small table, and a TV. I put my bags down and decided to take a shower. The water was hot, which felt good after a long day of driving. Afterward, I lay down on the bed, ready to get some sleep. That's when the strange things started happening. At first, I heard soft whispers. I couldn't make out any words, but it sounded like people were talking right outside my door. I got up and checked, but the hallway was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination and went back to bed. But then I saw shadows moving in the room. They flickered on the walls, like someone was walking around. I sat up, feeling a growing sense of unease. The shadows didn't make any sense. There was no one else in the room, and the door was locked. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder. And the shadows kept moving. My heart was pounding. I decided I couldn't stay in that room any longer. I got up and tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. I pulled and pulled, but it was stuck. "Let me out!" I shouted, but no one came. The whispers turned into a soft, eerie laugh. And the shadows seemed to close in on me. I felt trapped, panic rising in my chest. I don't remember how, but eventually I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, I was in the motel lobby, lying on one of the couches. The clerk was standing over me, looking concerned. "What happened?" I asked, feeling confused and a little scared. "You were in room 13, he said quietly. "That room has been closed for years. No one is supposed to stay there." "But you gave me the key," I protested, showing him the key in my hand. It was old and rusty now, not like it had looked the night before. The clerk shook his head. "Room 13 is cursed. People who stay there hear things, see things. Some never come out. The key you're holding, that key was lost years ago." I looked at the key, then back at the clerk. "But I was in there last night. How did I end up here?" The clerk sighed. "Sometimes the room lets people go. Maybe it's the room's way of warning others. You're lucky to be alive." I felt a shiver run down my spine. The memories of the whispers and shadows came flooding back. I didn't know what to say. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I thanked the clerk and quickly gathered my things. As I was leaving, I glanced back at the motel. It looked even older in the daylight, like it was barely holding together. I got into my car and drove away, not looking back. The experience haunted me for the rest of my trip. I couldn't stop thinking about the whispers, the shadows, and the old rusty key. To this day, I avoid old motels and make sure to never stay in room 13. I don't know what I encountered that night, but I'm grateful I made it out. The memory of that eerie room will stay with me forever. I worked the night shift at a remote gas station. It was a lonely job, but I didn't mind. Most nights were quiet, with only a few customers stopping by to fill up their tanks. I usually spent my time reading or listening to the radio. One night around midnight, a car pulled up to the gas pump. I glanced out the window and waited for the driver to get out. But no one did. The car just sat there with its engine running. I thought maybe the driver had fallen asleep or needed help, so I decided to go outside and check. As I approached the car, I noticed something strange. The gas pump was running, but no one was holding it. It was just stuck in the car's fuel tank, pumping gas. I looked inside the car and saw that it was empty. The driver's seat, the passenger seat, the back seats, no one was there. The radio inside the car was on, but all it played was static. It was eerie, like the sound was trying to say something but couldn't quite get the words out. I reached in to turn off the pump, when suddenly the car's lights turned on, blinding me for a moment. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes. When I looked again, I saw a shadowy figure in the driver's seat. My heart pounded in my chest. Who was this person from? The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just sat there, staring straight ahead. "Hey!" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you okay?" The figure didn't respond. I took a step closer, but before I could say anything else, the car's engine roared to life. The tires screeched as the car sped off into the night, leaving me standing there, shaken and confused. The gas pump clattered to the ground, spilling a bit of gasoline. I hurried back inside the gas station and locked the door. My hands were trembling. I tried to calm down, telling myself it was just a prank or my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The rest of the night was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Every time a car approached, I tensed up, expecting the shadowy figure to return. But no one else came. When morning finally arrived, I was relieved to see my coworker Tom arrive to take over my shift. I told him about the strange car and the figure I had seen. Tom listened, then said, "You know, there's a story about this place. They say a man died in a car accident right here, a year ago today." I stared at him, my blood running cold. "What happened?" "People say he lost control of his car and crashed into the gas pump," Tom explained. "He didn't make it. Some folks around here believe his spirit still haunts this place." I didn't know what to think. The car, the shadowy figure, the static on the radio, it all seemed too real to be just a story. But I didn't want to believe it was a ghost either. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I decided to do some research and found an old newspaper article about the accident. The man's name was Peter, and he had died exactly a year ago in a crash at the gas station. The article mentioned that he was on his way home from work when it happened. That night, I went back to work with a heavy heart. I felt a strange connection to Peter, like I understood his loneliness working late at night. As I stood behind the counter, I whispered a quiet prayer for him, hoping he had found peace. The gas station seemed quieter than usual, almost peaceful. I still felt uneasy, but I also felt a sense of closure. Maybe Peter's spirit had returned one last time, trying to find his way home. Or maybe it was just a coincidence, and my mind had filled in the blanks. Either way, I knew I would never forget that night. The shadowy figure, the empty car, the static on the radio, it all reminded me that sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. And sometimes the lonely nights at the gas station are lonelier than we think. From that day on, I made sure to keep the gas station well lit and always stayed alert. I never saw the shadowy figure again, but I always felt a chill when I thought about Peter and his last lonely drive.